Hey, we're live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Adelaide Rhodes from Oregon State University, Center for Genome Research and Biocomputing today, and I'm going to walk you through an exercise on how to construct websites using restructured text and interlink them with your GitHub materials so that your pipelines and classes can look very smart. So here's an example of what we hope to accomplish today. This page that I'm broadcasting right now is one that I constructed doing exactly what the steps that we're going to do today. And you may notice that it looks like HTML on the front of the page, but underneath it is a very simple text format called restructured text. And the reason I started using restructured text is because I was getting very upset and mad at myself losing all the little links in the HTML code. I mean, I'd have the beginning of one link and I couldn't find the end of another link, and I just spent hours staring at a screen, and it became very cumbersome in order to get the information I needed done quickly. So through some of Titus's workshops and stuff, I've become aware of restructured text. So I want to walk you guys through the tutorial today using basically a text editor. So if everyone is ready, open up a text editor, and I had recommended a few different ones before we got started. The good ones tend to have line numbers along the side so that you can keep track of where errors might be being made in your code. And basically, the hardest part of this is just putting your content together. The easiest part is actually formatting it for delivery to the internet. So before I get started, let me just pause and see if anyone in the room needs help getting a text editor open. You guys have text editors? Okay, great. And you guys at Davis have your text editors open?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so this is my website. It's empty. I'm going to fill it up with stuff. First thing I want to do is give myself a title to my document, perhaps, and then maybe I want to have some introductory text, and maybe I'll say who I am, like author. Maybe I'll put that up there. So what you want to do is just start thinking as if you were somebody going to a website trying to find information, and come up with categories that are simple enough for people to navigate through, because the end product is going to have an index over to the left that helps people click back and forth through your website. So anything that you do here just at the beginning can save you a lot of trouble down the line. So I want to say, I have some introductory text. Okay, this is a web page about Sphinx and restructured text, for example. So you guys can just add some more information, just as if you were writing this out on a Word document. I have some more things to say. It can go on and on and on. So basically what you're beginning to see is that restructured text is very simple. This isn't restructured text yet. This is just plain old text. But it's almost restructured text because we've got the basic building blocks in here. Paragraphs are the basic building blocks. So a paragraph is denoted by an empty line above and an empty line below. So restructured text first recognizes paragraphs. The next thing that we can do is give some emphasis to things in our text. So another way to, for those of you who are used to doing Markdown, there's these kinds of things that you can do to create emphasis in a restructured text document. So I might want to have title be the biggest piece of text on the page. Author, maybe I've got second biggest. And I of course want to put your name here, so we can Stephanie, you can put your name. Andrew, you can put your name. You may or may not want this broadcast to the world when you do make your website. And then you want to continue down here, and anything that's at the same level, you want to give the same level of emphasis. In order to have an emphasis, you have to go either all the way above and below, have an overline and an underline, or once you get into the smaller styles, it can just be an underline. So what I've done here is created a title with some emphasis. I've created a section that's at the same level as this section. So there's two sections, author and introductory text, and they're at the same level at this point. And then I've got a few paragraphs under the introductory text. But every now and then I am going to want to put a species name in my text. So this happens a lot. You may have things that you want to do that require some kind of an emphasis, like italics or bold. So here, this is really hard, y'all. This is going to just blow your mind. I just put one asterisk before and after the thing I want to be italicized. Of course, there's more to it than that. I mean, I may want something in bold. So here I have my bold. But it's not possible to do both bold and italic. So one thing you lose in restructured text is the ability, sorry, that should only be two stars here. You lose the ability to have nested italics within bold. So you're pretty much limited to just italics, just bold, not both at the same time. Another thing that you need to know about restructured text is that you cannot start a line with an asterisk. That doesn't make sense to it, because asterisks are something that it looks for at the beginning of a line if you're going to have a list. So if I'm going to have some list items, and maybe I'll just make this a different level by putting a different symbol here. So now what I've got is the largest level usually is the pounds over lines. The second largest level is asterisks over lines. And then the third step down in the index. So think about chapters, sections, and subsections. So this is the beginning of my chapter. This is the beginning of a section, list items. And it's going to think an asterisk at the beginning of the line is, part of a list, and use italics at the beginning of a line. And another thing you cannot do is have an asterisk for emphasis for inline editing. It's called inline editing because this only works if you're in a paragraph. You can't incomplete it. Like if you have an asterisk at the beginning and not at the end somewhere in that paragraph, it's going to confuse the restructured text. So even though the rules are very simple, it can also be tripped up very easily too. Okay, so that is part one, just talking about how to write simple things into the text. But restructured text is so easy and has a lot of features that allow you to do things like enumeration and things like that. So I'm just going to switch to my main page right now. I'm going away from the one that you guys are working on, just to run through a few more of the features you can use in restructured text. But before I do that, let me pause and see if anyone in Davis has a question. And I've lost my Etherpad. Sorry, trying to find the Etherpad. Okay, so there's no questions. Let me just pull up the Etherpad again, y'all. Sorry about that. Because people can put questions there. Okay, so no questions so far. I'll just put this over to the side where I can see it. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a document that you do not have, because we have not created it yet, that shows you a little bit about what I was just doing. Let me put this over to the side. Sorry, it makes my screen so huge in here. And I want to do soft wrapped. Text display, soft wrapped. Okay, so this is what we just started doing. So you don't have that part at the top yet. That comes in when you do the Sphinx command. So you should not see that, but you should see something where you created a title, and then you created your first section, and you started typing text in paragraph form into the sections. And I created the first section is introduction, the second introduction is tutorial, and then here's some of the basic information about things you needed to do beforehand. And then here's the items that we're going to use in restructured text today. So you may have a paragraph, and you can also indent paragraphs from each other. So you don't need to do anything special to have an indented paragraph. So I can go back to my new thing here, my new document, and maybe we can just practice that. Just tab and say I have an indented paragraph. And the cool thing about restructured text is that it will remember that. And then the inline markup I just spoke about, that's using italics and bold, and it will recognize an asterisk inside a line if it's in an equation, but it's going to ignore it as an emphasis. So if you meant to have an italic starting here, it's not going to see that. You can't have, sorry, this is not on the page. Let me see. I don't know how to change the things so you guys see that. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you have something where you don't want it to be italicized, but you do want to have an asterisk in your text, that you use something called an escape line. So that can be a couple different ways to do it. So for those of you familiar with regular expression, if I wanted to actually have it say word with asterisks around it, this is a word, I can tell restructured text to ignore the fact that these are typically the symbols for italics by putting a backslash in front of it. There's other ways that I can ignore special formatting. The next way to ignore special formatting is to use something called a grav symbol. I believe that's how you say it, a grav symbol. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the grav symbol, it's located on a Macintosh keyboard next to the number 1. So immediately to the left of the number 1, underneath the tilde, there's this little accent called a grav. And you may have called it a backtick or a backquote. It's all the same word, but you can use gravs to ignore special emphasis by putting 2 gravs before and after a word. So if you're using the backslash method, it'll ignore the special character for that incidence, but if you want to have a whole bunch of special characters, you may not want to confound it and make it difficult to read, because we really want to keep this as close to a text document as possible. So doing gravs instead of backslash makes it just a little bit easier to see it. And also you can do that at the beginning of a line. I don't think backslash asterisk at the beginning of a line is really good for the program. So this will let me see this as it really is. Okay, see this as it really is. Okay, all right, so that's another little trick that is you're going to use a lot. It doesn't like nested contents to start with white space, so you can't have a space, asterisk space text. It won't see this. It doesn't like to have an asterisk in front of a blank space. So if you need to have an asterisk in front of blank space, you can put a backslash there to work around that. Okay, so those are just some of the basics for inline editing, how to have it use special emphasis. There's only 2 special emphasis tools, the italics, which is 1 asterisk, and the bold, which is 2, and how to ignore the special emphasis by using a backslash or a grav. Now we're going to move on to things that we would do if we're trying to create a class website. We might want to have, the first week of class, these are the things we're going to do. And so creating lists is a very common topic. We just started creating a list, and I realized I made a mistake when I told you about creating a list, because when you make a list, it doesn't count if it's all the way to the left. You have to indent your list for restructured text to pick up on them. So if I want an enumerated list, restructured text can see different kinds of enumeration. I know you guys are just taking my word for all this stuff at this moment in time, but in a minute we're going to jump over to a web interface where we can see all this is happening. And then just like before, it remembers the indents. I can have multiple levels. Right. So you're going to be creating levels all along. You want to be careful. Anything that becomes a section is going to be in line on the left side. But anytime you start doing this indent thing, that's exactly how it's going to look on the website. So try to be conscious and not have too many levels going all the way over to the right side of your screen, or else it'll look really junky. You're just like in my thing here, you won't be able to see the whole page when you're constricted by the resolution. So list can be done, started with numbers, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, uppercase Roman numerals, lowercase Roman numerals, numbers completely in parentheses, or numbers with one right parenthesis. So you can see why restructured text has been very handy for people who are trying to write things that look like books with chapters, subchapters, sections, so and so, because all of this can be built into the structure. Basic bulleted lists have conventions. So your top bullet does have to be an asterisk, your second bullet has to be a dash, and your third bullet is usually started with a positive sign. Now I have to give you a little bit of a caution here, because we're going to be using the Sphinx HTML interpreter to turn this document into an HTML document. So it understands that this is the top bullet, this is the second bullet, this is the third bullet, and it understands that the sections where there are based on like a single dash versus a double dash versus equals. But other converters from restructured text into HTML may read these slightly differently. You won't get an error unless you're trying to use the Sphinx converter, but I just wanted to make you aware that you can use any of these for bullets technically in restructured text. The reason I have it set up like this today is because we're going to be using Sphinx to reinterpret it. So, so just like for the bullets, we can have a main bullet, and we can have a secondary bullet, and we can have plus even another bullet. So in theory, these symbols, these asterisks, minuses, and positives can be interchanged in restructured text. Where you have to be aware is when you try to convert them to HTML, it doesn't always work the way you want it to. Okay. All right, so now we've talked about two types of lists, enumerated lists and bulleted lists. But there's another type of list, and this gets into being where this is very good for writing textbooks or how-to manuals. You can make a definition list. So what you see here is a word that is all the way over to the left, and then some kind of a definition. But what you may notice that's different between this definition and the other list is that there's not a blank line immediately following the word. So for the list I was just showing you, it's actually a good idea to have a blank line after each level. What you can have in a definition is you don't have the line, you just indent, you say this is a definition here. Okay? So those are the three types of list items. You may sometimes have stuff that you're copying and pasting from another location, and you already like how it's formatted. It's already indented exactly the way you want it. It's already listed exactly the way you want. I just want to copy and paste it directly from a text document into this current document. So that's when we start doing something called literal blocks. And a literal block is indicated by this : symbol. So you can put the : symbol directly after the preceding paragraph to where you want it to look, exactly like you want it to look. And then you have to make it a paragraph. There has to be a blank line, the paragraph where you want it to look exactly the way you like it to look, and then a space. But if you have a lot of space, empty lines in your text, you need to remember that it's not going to remember the : past each paragraph. So you're going to have a : for each paragraph that you want to make a literal text box. So let's just practice that. So I would like, what's the next thing to look like it did. Okay, and then so it's the end of my paragraph. I put 2 colons. And then, I can have a bunch of like weird, symbols, and it doesn't have to worry about asterisks or bold or any of that stuff. All right. And then to end literal block, we just space down 1. So now it's going to see this one, and then anything that's indented, we can have a second paragraph. As long as it is indented, it will ignore special characters. And then when I go back out here, it's going to be returned to the format that it's not ignoring these special characters. And then if I want to have a special literal block, and I don't have a paragraph beforehand, say it's the beginning of a section, all I have to do is put : and then an extra line, and once again, just ignoring stuff. Okay, and then here, no more example. So this you might want to do if you're copying over something from another text document, where you already have it just the way you want to have it. So I have a little example here where I might have wanted to have pre-formatted text, a picture of my Rambo. So here's Rambo, and if I copy and paste this, as long as I have the : right before this empty line, I can put Rambo in here. So the second line down from the : is the beginning of my dog right here, and that just goes till the end. And then there's an empty line that tells me I'm done with literal block text, and now I'm on section headers. Okay, so are there any questions at this point? Let me go back to the Etherpad and look. No questions. Okay, so you can see from the example I posted at the beginning, where did that go? So that's here. You can see that my dog is in the web page right there. So there he is. So it's just like I copied and pasted him from. So see up here, those literal blocks are a slightly different color and stand out because they're exact copies of what we were doing. So, and then here's I've put in some of those double colons in here, so you're not going to see them on the HTML version. But what's making these white blocks stand out is that double colon at the end of the preceding paragraph or at the beginning of the section. And so it's a pretty cool tool, especially if you've already pre-written a bunch of stuff. Okay, here's just a little bit more information about how in most restructured text documents, the symbols are interchangeable. It doesn't matter how I make the text headers. It doesn't matter if it's equal, or minus, or if it's colons, as long as I do, for each section here, as long as I do the same, it's going to consider it at the same level. But as I said a few minutes ago, Sphinx only recognizes certain section symbols. So if I try to do this, this is a subsection symbol. If I try to use the subsection symbol of purely the subsection symbol of equals, it would throw an error when I'm converting it to HTML. So the rules are pretty simple. They're laid out. They're always the same for Sphinx. I would say Sphinx is what you're going to end up using a lot because you're going to be doing an automated method of pulling your RS keys into HTMLs and then pushing the HTML to your Git. You're going to want to just stick to the conventions of the programs you're using. So here's just an example of how I set up that tutorial website. The introduction is, sorry, people on YouTube are going to see that. So you're going to see the introduction was marked out with the same level as the start of the tutorial. The paragraph section is equal signs across the bottom. So this is called an underline and an overline when it's on both sides. It's just an underline and an underline. So basically, I looked up what the conventions are, and so the pound sign is the sections are the asterisks of that Bitbucket website. I'll show in the room when we get a little break here. Yeah, these has to come in order. So it has to be in the right order, and it has symbols, but just may see restructured text documents that don't conform to that. But the reason that we be back inside our document, it's pretty cool. I can return back to any part of the document just by typing the name of the section and then an here and then put it. And so as long as it has a section name, and what do I have sections in here called? So I've got one called list items to return to list items underscore. It's going to see that as a link back inside the tab. It's also very helpful when you have very long text documents and you might be referring backwards and forward to a few things. Of course, we're going to be a little smarter than that. We're going to create an index on the left side of the page so that people are frustrated in navigating through all these items. Okay. Back here. Just a little bit more text in here in the Bitbucket, like people in the room. When we get a break here, that just talks about sometimes when you're doing restructured text, depending on which browser you're in, interpret this pound title as something to be centered. That happens every now and then. I haven't seen it. I don't use Firefox. In Firefox, I tend to use Chrome and Internet Explorer. So I just needed to let you guys know that too. Oh, and then here's that ordering that I was talking about that you have to stick to, where you've got overline and underline at the beginning, sign, then just plain old underline equals, underline, caret, and then underline. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to see how we did. There's a website here, and for those of you in the room, you're not going to be able to copy paste this, but it's http rst.ninjs.org. So we're going to go there, and we're going to copy and paste our document in and see if we've made any mistakes. And I bet I have. I mean, get it 100% right the first time. Before I do that, I might want to save my text document to the text editor that I recommended, because not in the Word. So here's my test page. I'm going to save it as RS because this is encoded text editor. So it's not going to put any of those nasty extra line breaks and things for me, this option. And why I need to choose the Unix is because do is all on command line, and I don't want it to get like the what word. So that's why I recommend a set of specific text editors. Save it. But website to work, my text, the website, and show me on the right. So this is a great way to look at text because it gives you messages that tell you, oops, what's wrong. And sorry, just having a little bit of a challenge, but as you can see here, so on the page, then author's the second biggest, at the same level. And then I just go down here, and if I scroll through, you can see my list items showed up very nicely. The bullets became bullet points, and as you can see here, they're grouped together now. It wraps it and everything. It looks good. It looks like the list that I wrote into the text. And then I did see there was an error down here. It says here there is an unknown target name item. So when I wrote that, I didn't do a very good job. So I think maybe I / in front of the space to get it to work. Let's see. if that fixes it. That didn't work. So it's not seeing the space. I think it's very finicky.
Back quotes around this item.
Which one?
Back quotes.
Not quotes. Robs?
Just one.
Or just one? Thank you.
And the underscore needs to be outside the back quote.
Okay. Like that. All right, cool. It doesn't give me I want to return to title. Okay, so there. Huh. Etherpad for me. Okay, you need to use back quotes, I think. Because in this case, I used title with one single quote, and it did create the link back. Right? And then here, I think it's the fact that there's a space in there.
Yeah.
The underscore has to be outside.
Which one?
The underscore is outside.
Thank you. Thank you. Woo! So this is probably one of the most challenging things we've done today, right? So what are you guys thinking? Is it something you think you can pick up pretty quick? Yeah, it's very logical. I like it. There's not a lot to remember. Things that I want to, I forget. Like I can go look it up really quickly. So yeah, so it links back. So there we go. So we've done the first part of the tutorial where we created an RST document. So the next thing we're going to do, and I don't know if the people in the room have done this, have you set up a Bitbucket or GitHub account? Oops, so sorry about this. What we're going to do now is go to your GitHub or Bitbucket, and then we're going to copy and paste our document in. So the same one that we just pasted in here, we're just going to take it, and the easiest way to do this is go to Bitbucket and go to my source. And then you want to just say new file. And then I just paste it in. And then down at the bottom, I want to tell, this is Bitbucket, I want to tell it that this is a restructured text document so that it recognizes that for the viewing. And then I just need to give it a file name. So has everyone here GitHub before and created a repository? Okay, let me go back a step and talk about that. So this is my test page. Okay, I'm just going to save this real quick so that doesn't get lost. So I saved by commit, but let me go back. We have someone in the room here who doesn't use Bitbucket regularly. So you have a Bitbucket account, and you should pop up here if you're logged in. So the first step is log in. And then the next thing you want to do is go to repository. And this is all what I'm doing on the internet. This is before Git clone, Git push. I'm not about that stuff today. That's a whole nother tutorial that's offered. But you create a repository, you give, so say this is my repository. And because I want you guys to be able to see it, you would uncheck the private repository, and then you create a repository. To say all this stuff here, hey, your repository is empty, you put something in. So in the Git push, that's when we could push from our source, our origin. But let's, and we don't need to do this yet. It's set up a repository, and I can see all my repositories by going to my dashboard up here. So I just clicked on Bitbucket. It shows repositories. I just made one called "This is my repository." okay? And the way that I created a file, it says my repository, that, but I go here, my directory at this point. So if I go here, it's empty. So it says this directory. Okay. From, okay. So this is what you want to do if you haven't already done on a computer, the file that we just created into our repository. So what you want to do home, you're going to want to open up a Mac. How about you guys? Oh, let's see, go to Etherpad. Because it's a slightly different to do. You need open shell. You guys are Mac people. So the window, Mac, a directory, I call it my new repo. Okay, and I'm going to go into this directory, but I page. So I have to go figure out where to put it. So I file. I have one. Okay, this is in my source. Okay, so you just have to figure out the file. And then we can set up our repository on Bitbucket by following the directions. So what we want to do is first run a command inside the location of where our repository is called git init. Okay, so that's going to tell my computer to start a Git repository. So did anyone here get an error because you do not have Git loaded on your machine? You're okay? Okay. So what happened? Okay, good. Okay, so we had one person who needed to load, so that's why I talked real slow. So then you want to add your repository. So my repository in this location would be at a different location, but basically the remote location, to your local computer can know where to push and pull files. Okay, so I just did that. So now I might want to see git status. Okay, it tells me that I did a commit. It says you haven't added this file. This file shows up as being all red because I didn't add it yet. So this is where in it, then I did git remote, and I copied and pasted from my remote repository this information. It always does this whenever you create a repository on GitHub or Bitbucket. It'll tell you what to put on this line. Okay. So now I did git status. It told me you've got a file in here that I just copied over that it cannot see in the Git repository because I haven't pushed it yet. So now I want to git add this file. All right, and now if I do git status, you'll see that it turned green, meaning that the local machine now recognizes that you've added this test page to something you want to put on your repository. So now I want to commit that change. It doesn't remember that I did that until I commit it. So I do git commit -m, and then I put a message. So -m means message. So like this is my test page. All right. Okay, so one file changed on my local machine, happened on my local machine. So now I need to push the change to my online repository so I can see that file. So now I do something origin master. That tells it to take any change in, meaning my laptop, and send the master, which is the name of the branch that is my remote directory. So after you've finished all that, if you go back here to source, you're going to see, hey, it showed up. That's cool, right? Errors because I don't have a README file. So this thing that we've been doing here, where we're making restructured text files, like actually was made for the purposes of making README files for GitHub. So what we can do now is take this file and edit it here just by clicking on this. And I'd say let's just make this our README file. So if I click on it, it gives me that. Whoa, did you guys notice what happened when I clicked on the file? Well, let's go back and see. So here's what I uploaded. And when I finally got it loaded and I went to edit it, what happened?
It interpreted it.
It interpreted it. Thank you. Yeah, so the GitHubs and the Bitbuckets are restructured text interpreters. They're interpreters. So they often use the same architecture that Sphinx is using to interpret. So this is another way, like if you can't remember that website I told you about, the weirdly, this one was created like 5 years, going to disappear, make a little Jupyter notebook time, but it's another way to check all that restructured text that you actually putting it onto the Bitbucket here just directly on a website. But look what happens when I click the edit button, it gives me the restructured text version of the document. This is why it's important to know the restructured text when you're making, because they're cross-compatible. It can interpret it. I'm interpreting, I'm just curious, I haven't tried this. It's here, for a new type. So theoretically, restructured text should be able to read this. Go through the Sphinx interpreter on the way to here, but let me see what happens. So when you save a file that you've been editing on the remote location, you always want to make sure to remember to commit the change so that you can, and then if I go to view the file, hey, you can see that it didn't, what happened is that careted text superseded the pound text. So it can apparently read one or the other, both of those. It actually got rid of title. And then the other thing you can do here is when you're editing is you can view, right? So when I was viewing it, I didn't see that. So, but you can hit diff, and it can show you what I changed between the two versions. And the other cool thing about using the Git repository restructured text editing is that it saves old versions. So if I accidentally got rid of something I didn't mean to get rid of, it'll allow me to go capture whatever it is I accidentally got rid of. Okay, so you guys just made a web page from your restructured text. Do you realize that? You're already like, we're only 45 minutes in, and we've already done the thing that we set out to do. Cool. Okay, are there any questions? I'm going to pull up the Etherpad, but it's 10:15 here. I'm not sure what time it is where you are. I assume it's the same. We'll just take a little break here while we go into the next phase, which is setting up our EC2 so that not only the websites that are based on Bitbuckets, we can also have the formatting that we like too, to make it even more amazing when people come to our websites and look at our pipelines. Okay, so we're going to take about a 10 right now and look at setting up our EC2 instances. I'm going to walk the people in the class here through it, but for those of you who are long distance, let me pull up the place where you can find this information. Tutorial. So if you go to my repo, I'm sorry I don't have a link to it yet, source here, and you go to creating HTML, that's the next step. And as you can see, it's not reading it as RST for some reason, but hey, we're going to make this one maybe our test case to send up the line. Okay. All right, so I'm going to work with the people in the class here on getting their EC2 instances set up. I'm not hearing anything from the other side. I think we're okay.
Okay, we'll just wait for you to come back whenever.
Okay, so let's say like 10:25.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. Here. Hi.
What source do you recommend for text or input?
Oh, if you already have
I just
a,
have text edit.
that's fine. If you've been able to get stuff done, don't worry about that. Because now we're going to make our RST into an HTML.
Okay.
We're probably not going to get to the pandoc thing today, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
So you can just go down to this part.
Just this
Mm-hmm.
second and fourth. And where is that on your page?
Right. I think they're ready.
Where were those things in your page?
Those things in the page. They are at line 16. Here we go, line 17.
Is that on part 2?
That is in creating HTML. So if you go over here to the source here, and you see
Okay.
the different Yeah, sorry, I didn't have, I was changing them at the last minute. I did. That's my fault. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay. Let's see.
I don't have act.
Apt-get. What do you, what's the message that you get?
Sudo apt-get command.m.
Ooh, how about just apt-get?
Not found.
Okay. How about pip install python -sphinx? PI, like, do it this way.
So pip hyphen install.
Yeah, hold on. Does that work?
Command.m.
Okay. You have Python on your machine?
Yes.
Okay. Let me go down here. I have a line for how to install. Oh, let me just go here. It is. Yeah. Easy _ install pip. Try this. We're probably going to have it started soon, so
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah.
I can come back and help you with this. Okay.
We don't mind waiting if it takes a few more minutes.
Are you guys ready? I don't have that much more left to go over, and the difficulty, we can neither get this running, nor are we able to get the Python Sphinx running on Stephanie's computer. But I think I can show you guys the idea of this, and I could come back. I'm going to work with Stephanie after to help her get it to work. Guys, what are your thoughts? Do you want to keep going, or do you want us to wait until every instance?
It does not matter to us, whatever's easier for you.
Let's just go through the rest of this. It's still kind of, there's still a lot more that we could talk about, but I think I just want to give you guys a general idea, and then if we finish up soon, then I can sit with Stephanie and get her computer running in a way that will allow her to do this all the time. Okay. So I'm going to start. So now we're working on the next portion of the tutorial called creating HTML. And as you can see, it's written in restructured text, but I haven't made an HTML out of it yet. So this is like a typical problem that you might have if you want to put your own style sheets into a web page. And so the first step is making it an HTML in a way that allows you to add style sheets. So the first block of text here is if you were on an EC2 instance, these are all the steps that you would go through in order to make it possible for you to use the Sphinx interpreter. So Sphinx is a Python tool. You need to have Python installed on your computer, and then you need to install this script, the Python-Sphinx. And you see a couple other things in here that you may or may not need to install. You don't need them necessarily for this tutorial, but I wanted to put it together for everyone who might be coming in and want to try different options for developing websites straight from restructured text. So I've got a tool here called DocUtils, and I've got a tool here called Pandoc. So DocUtils actually allows you to convert a restructured text document straight into HTML. But the problem with that is it looks kind of boring. It looks exactly like what it looks like, you know, on the GitHubs. It doesn't give you those fancy colors. It doesn't give you fancy buttons. It doesn't give you the index on the left side. It's just strictly a text converter. What I like about using the Sphinx instead is that it's able to take a straight text document and make it look all fancy by creating an index and a search bar, and it allows you to choose colors based on which style sheet you select. So that's all been automated. It's also an automated system. So if I go into my text file here, for example, I could write a simple script that runs it through the Python tool and makes an HTML my simple text document. So the whole point of all this today was just trying to make it as simple as possible to edit and generate nice looking HTML files. Okay, so we were having a little technical difficulty. We're just going to pick up what we're able to get to, which is thinking about how to use Sphinx to convert a file. So as I said here, I've got an example of a file I haven't creating HTML. So you guys have a file on your desktop that you just created, like your test tutorial. So what you would want, first of all, is make a place to put all this stuff. So here I have my repository, and this is not the same repository where we're reading the material from. This is the one I just made as an example of how to make a repository. So the creating HTML page is not here yet. So maybe I just want to make that page happen here. So the first thing I want to do is do Sphinx Quick Start. So this only works if you've been successful in getting all that other stuff to download. But what happens when you type in Sphinx Quick Start is it's very automated. It already asks you all the questions you need to know to generate these HTML page with a lot less stress. So I'm still in my new repo that I created to demonstrate how to get on GitHub. And I'm just going to stay in here. So my root path for this HTML site is just going to stay right here. And I do want to separate my source and build directories. And I'm going to show you why in a minute, because I like to edit my restructured text file instead of editing directly on the HTML. And if I do the source and build directories separately, then I don't have to stress about how to find the HTML versus the RST. Okay, so I do want to build those differently. I just use the default underscore here for the beginning of the static page, but you could put a name. You could put, hey, this is my fancy new repo underscore. You know, it'll show up in front of the directory name static with an underscore and then whatever fancy name you want. And so this is my project called Creating an HTML from REST. Okay, here. So these are all options that when you use Quick Start. Once you create the page, you don't have to do Quick Start again. But this is kind of nice because it allows you to keep track of what created this in the version that you're working on. Anything that's inside brackets is the default value. So if I don't type anything in this line, it's just going to pick English. If I don't type anything in this line, it's going to pick RST. And is a tool written for restructured text. I could have put .tf or .rst, but an HTML interpreter on the website is file. Whereas if you pick RST, indents and enumerations and bullets and stuff that we want. So the name of my master document for this project, I'm just going to call it Create HTML, or, oh, yeah, so I'm going to call it HTML. So this is the name of the page it's going to make for me. A quick start, make what you do is if you pick PNG math, you cannot also pick math jacks. So one of them or the other. So if you just hit Y, you might get an error that says, oh, you can only pick math and not math jacks too. So it'll just go with the first one. PNG math is a way for it to show mathematical formulas inside an HTML. Okay, so this is really important. You always want to say, yes, make me a makefile. It doesn't matter about the Windows command file, but it doesn't hurt to make it. In case I was doing this remotely on my EC2 instance, I would want to make the make.bat file, because that's how I would recall the HTML creation every single time. So something happened, because now if I ls, I'm inside my directory. I've got a makefile now. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what a makefile does, a makefile is just a list of commands that Sphinx has built for us. So this is all the stuff that we would have had to do HTML from scratch. Somewhere in all our setup and everything, we would have had to go through every single one of these commands and make a list of them and then put them in a script and for it to work. When you have a makefile, it does all that work for you. So all I have to do to get it to run from here on out, to have it run all these commands that recognizes things like the style sheets and the pickle and all this other stuff, is just run the makefile. So once it creates the initial HTML, that's really nice, because it's created and then I can recreate one command instead of having to go and remember all these different commands. Some of them are not going to matter to us, but it set all our variables at the beginning, such as, hey, do you want a separate build directory? And it's created a variable called Sphinx build, and tells you where it's going to put changes. Oh, here's where build directory is. So that was all those questions we answered at the very beginning is automatic variables. So that's a very handy thing, right? Okay, Control X. Let's see what else is in here. So I asked it to separate build. So if I go into build, I look, there's nothing in there right now. And then if I go into source, this is where it made the RST file. So this is also where it puts the config file. And I guess I must have accidentally hit the letter Y, because instead of having underscore, it's got Y static and Y templates. Yours might have underscore static and underscore templates still too. So I've got create RST. Let me just check on Etherpad, make sure I'm not going too fast and losing people here. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Refresh Etherpad. Okay, just checking. Trying to remember to do that. Okay, and so now here's my raw RST file, but it doesn't have any content because I literally just asked Quick Start to make it. Excellent. I hope that's someone. Anywho, yes. So I just need to make it. If I look at the top of the file, this is what I was talking about earlier, where it creates here a quiet block of text. So this is something we didn't get into the restructured text format, which was that the restructured text this won't show up on the HTML if I put ... and then start typing my paragraph. Anything in that paragraph is going to be hidden. This would show up on my website. I don't want these lines to show up on my website. So what I generally do is do Control K from inside Nano all I really care about is you have to have a table of contents. So I keep that. And then the other thing that's really handy is to have a search box for people to look at. So the way I erase things, I need to leave a line in between where the table of content tree and then the search box was set up. And the HTML, this was one that I generated on my desktop inside my new repo right here. And if I go to the build, so I'm doing this from desktop because that's what we're doing here at Oregon State. So build is empty, but source right here has my RST file. See, and it's empty right now. But because I'm doing this on my laptop and it's pretty easy just to nano this stuff in, I can just go into my text document that I have all about making our convert to HTML. This is the one I want to make an HTML out of. And I just select all the text. And I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I could have just copied the file into that directory to the source part. This was just easy for me to do. So if I go to my other text editor, so I got a couple different ones. Here. And now I just save it. So now when I do nano, it's got all information in here. Now whether I did a good job with the restructured text remains to be seen. I haven't generated out of this file yet. This is all important information I was generating for the tutorial, and I was about to make the HTML, and I thought, oh, hey, why don't I just hold on to that, and we could do that as part of the tutorial. So I did Control X. All right, so I still do not have an HTML. That would be in the build. So that's in, I'm in new repo. That's where I have my repo that's going to Bitbucket. I do have a make file. There's nothing in build, there's no HTML, but I do have my restructured text file is now been created. It was created as an empty file, put in the source, that file, put it, and now I'm ready. So all I have to do is type wherever the make file is, be in that directory, type make HTML. And then you're going to see a lot of text come to the screen. Okay, a lot of it may not mean anything to you, and I did pretty well. I do have some warnings. So what happens here when you're running Sphinx is that it won't let your Sphinx document convert to an HTML if you did something wrong. So actually I'm seeing here that I did a lot of wrong. I did terrible, terrible things. But it's all by the line number. So for example, it's telling me that on line 32, there's a start string without an end string. And 34, there's a start string without an end string, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So using one of those REST interpreters probably would have saved me some trouble. But I do know that my test page is OK. So let me just do something here. Let me get rid of this. So let me, but if I go into build, it makes the HTML even if it's bad. So now there's two directories in build. It made doctrees build, and so now it made it anyway, even though it was terrible. And so what I'm going to do is just get rid of that. Make it just call it old. Oops. But I have another. Oops. I'm just trying to rename this so that if I write over, okay. I do have one that looked okay to me, and it was in the repo itself, the test. So what if I just copy that into source? Right. I make HTML that, right? And so now it's telling me a couple different errors. I've got that weird list items. So this is what I was talking about. Sometimes different text interpreters are going to respond to your your restructured test differently. All that trouble we were having with list space items, this text interpreter to HTML, the Sphinx interpreter, doesn't recognize the way we did it. So even though I got it to look right on that website's like different. So when I was doing it the way I did it and it wasn't looking right on that website, that was more a matter of how Sphinx works, you know, and that interpreter differ from each other as opposed to not really an error. I can take that line out just to get rid of that. And then the other error it gave me is that there's not any table content tree. So table content tree for this stuff to work. So I'm just going to go over here and pull out my table content that I created for that first bad file with so many errors. I need to go back and I can just copy this part here and put it into my restructured text file that I was just converting. So it doesn't like it if you don't have this in it, okay? So that was one error, and then the other one is the list items. So I'm gonna take that out. But it seemed like it didn't return an error. I think we had title. Oh yeah, this one was uncorrected. Yeah, that's probably why. Okay, it doesn't like it if you don't give it a table content. Okay, information. So now I made those changes in the REST file, the restructured text file, and now I'm going to make HTML again. And you can do this like infinite amounts of times. I don't do much. So saying that a document isn't included in a talk tree. So it's probably because I created a project called Create HTML, and then I changed the name of that page. So let me just go into source, and now I'm going to make move create HTML.rst to old, so it doesn't mistake it for this one. And call my test page the new Create HTML page, just to make it work well with Sphinx. So. Okay. So I go back to where the make file is and then make HTML. So it made the table content tree based on a project named this. That was the problem that I just had there. The project name has to be consistent with the HTML name. So if you change the HTML name, when you run the make file, anywhere it had that original file name, it's not going to work as well. So what I ended up doing is building a different Sphinx project for every HTML that I build, and then I just have them sync into a combined folder before pushing them up to the internet. But let's see how we did. Let's see if we got a good HTML file. So now I'm on my Mac. It's going to be different for people on EC2. I'm going to go to the build. I'm going to go to the HTML, and you'll see here, this was the one that was just created. I mean, it is an HTML file that looks just like a web page. So I could take that HTML file and I could put it on my own website, or I could put it in my Git repo, and then I could set up a script so that every time I pushed to the Git repo that it ran Sphinx to rebuild this HTML. But as you can see here, it's already a much nicer looking document. It's got table of contents here at the bottom. It's got a search bar, so I can search for fun, or I can search for, what's the word that's in there, table in there, titles in there. So I've got an yeah, see? So it gives you extra stuff that you do not get if you just use docutils to plain old convert the RST into HTML. As you can see, it's kind of a bland little format here. It's not very interesting. So the last little part of this introductory module on how to use restructured text to make really cool HTML is about how to fix it so that you can have different colored themes. And so this is based on a method that is found via Bootswatch. Let me just find the website for you. So this is called, this is a based on another Python script that you can load to your computer that brings in a variety of really cool themes that you could automate in your HTML builds. And so all it does is say, those of you who are familiar with HTMLs, like HTMLs, in order to tell it like, hey, this has to be blue, and this has to be white, and this has to be black, and the buttons have to be black and green, those are called style sheets. So some clever person already put together a lot of cool style sheets for us so that we don't have to like redo all that button making and everything like that. And the tool that I'm talking about is called the Boot Swatch, and there is a link to that in the tutorial. I'm just trying to find a link up here. Oops. I think it'll probably just be faster if I Google it again. Boot Swatch. Ooh, Boot Swatch. I don't mean Boot Swatch. Okay, so these are all free, and you can come to this website and you can find out what they're named. And so you can also test drive a bunch of themes. So here's one here called Cerulean. It'll show you, like, your search bar will be this nice blue. It's white background with blue text. You could choose, I like darkly myself. Maybe it's my physics background or something about dark matter or something. And the one that I showed you guys at the beginning was called like Superhero. This one's simplex. Oh, here it is, Superhero. So the one that I showed you right at the beginning, it's based on the superhero. And these are all the different cool things that Superhero will automate inside your restructured text document. So it'll recognize those headings and make them look like this. And it'll look, your block quotes will look like this now. Here's an example of your body text and your HTTPs are going to be orange underlined if you set the boot swatch setting. So in order to get that to work, we had to download some tools. I was having a little trouble with the EC2 instance getting this to work, but I'm just going to run through the concept of it. Don't worry if you can't follow it along, because the full tutorial materials will be uploaded later today, and I'll make sure anyone who attended is on the list. So I'm going to go back to my Bitbucket. Okay, and you know, we're going to apply this special style to this just by changing the configuration file. So the way we do that here is, and all the tools for how to do this. Sorry for the poor Bitbucket here. Go to source. Go to this install. Some of the basic information again. Oh, that's not what I want. I want the style sheets. Okay, making our document look nice. Okay, so what part here? Oops. Yeah, I was trying to get it to work in the EC2. Those of you who are doing this, you know, with me from Davis, if you are doing it in EC2, you know what happened. But you have the things, but you also need these two other programs. You need to install your Python text for Sphinx JP themes.basicstrap, and you need to install _bootstrap. And so if you're working from a keyboard Mac, on your Mac, the Sphinx setup is a little bit more cumbersome. Go straight to their web, do the downloads there instead of from command line in your terminal. It will just do the straight download of the installable file straight from the Sphinx website, just FYI. Okay, but since we're EC2, I had to install it as if I was in the EC2 instance. So we want to change our theme, and here I was working on a repo called tutorial, but now we're in new repo. So we're in new repo, so I'm going to go to CD source, all right, and then we're going to see in here, this is where the config file is. So the config file is telling the HTML builder what style we want. Like, that tells it, like, use blue buttons, use all that stuff. But it's really neat now because they've come up with a way to do this with just changing a couple different lines. So you want to nano in text file here, and we're going to make just a few changes. First thing is we're going to import the themes. And so to import the themes, we just take this line here, import Sphinx Bootstrap theme, and put it here. Okay. And then the next thing we want to change is tell it that we're going to use the Sphinx Bootstrap themes instead of the default. So the default here is indicated by a line somewhere in this file that says HTML theme. So one with these 3 lines here, and it's about halfway down the file, so it takes a little bit of time to find it. Is it in the audience to show? We're looking for HTML_theme. And this is all that stuff that was automated for. So every time we run the make, a lot of this stuff is being rebuilt based on the preferences we put in the config file. So this is really nice because we end up only having, so here we go. We see here that it put the default file for, when I downloaded to Mac, it made the default file Alabaster, the default theme. So that's why that was that nice white background with gray text. But that's not what I want. I want a different theme. So that was Alabaster. So now I'm going to replace this and say, okay. So when you did this from the EC2 instance, you got no theme. You just got plain old blah. So now what I want to do is I want to pick a theme that I liked here. So let's just see what the basic one. So I can pick a basic theme. I can pick something with the name, Cerulean Blue. I can pick a superhero. Well, let's just try this. And then the next thing we want to change down here is under HTML theme options. And this is where I changed it to Boot Swatch Superhero. So what it's saying here is use this special Python script to populate the themes. Because what's going to happen is they keep coming out with new themes all the time. So once I set it up so that it's always recognizing this basic strap theme, I can have like a lot of different to choose from. But I really like that superhero. So this is going to go where it says HTML theme options. And I don't know if this is going to work. We're going to try it. Please, bear with me. But here is where HTML theme options was, up here. And it was nothing before. So now I'm going to put this a little bit of text in. And hopefully this is going to work. And we'll get rid of that extra one. So it was formerly commented out, and now it's got Boot Swatch Superhero. So let's just keep your fingers crossed. Let's see if this works. So now I go back up to the main new repo directory. Okay, and then I'm going to make HTML. Oh, so there's no module named that. Okay, so let me go back in here. I think I just added that line because that was something they suggested for the EC2 instance, but I'm just going to comment that out because I'm doing this on my Mac. All right. Oh, something happened. This is awesome. Something happened. It passed a filter. Okay. Let's see if it made. So I need to go to where I was on my desktop with new repo. Okay. So new repo, go to the build, go to the HTML, be modified. That's the old one. Oh, that was the one I just did. There we go. I'm so excited this worked, y'all. But it looks like a lot. We just spent an hour and a half talking about it. But it's really not too bad. I mean, once you get the system set up and you pick a theme you like, and you can have different things for different pages, but I'm kind of a traditionalist. I'll stick with one. It's going to be very easy to automate because all this can be done by GitHub. And you can push it up, and you can just change one little file. You change the REST, you run the script, that makes HTML and then Git push. Okay, and that's it. We're at the end of the time that was allotted for this tutorial. I hope that it was worth your while. I'm going to keep developing the tool on this tutorial to make sure it's more consistent across platforms. I apologize it wasn't working on EC2 right away today, but I'll keep working on that for you. Now I'm going to send out a link to Titus and to Jessica. Thank you for hosting me. And I think we can end the record at this point.
Cool.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Okay, let's just stop that.